Hi everyone, Angela here. For this tea towel, I've already washed it and put it through the dryer. It shrunk down to about 17 inches wide by 26 inches long. You can use any size tea towel you'd like. Fold the width in half with wrong sides together. Fold in half the other way and mark the center on the fold. From that center, measure and mark 4 inches on either side. From those marks, measure up 3 inches and draw a line across. I'm using the Juki TL-2010Q sewing machine. The link for this and the tools I use are down in the description below. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, click the link for Echidna Sewing and Juki Junkies for North America. Stitch along that line between the 2 marks, backtacking at the start and finish. Open up to the right side and then center and flatten down the channel. Flip over to the back, fold the outer edges to the center, and flip over again. You can really fold your towel into any width that you like, but I like to have about an inch on each side from those center folds. Mark lines straight across at those 3 marks, then pin through all the layers on that center section. Flip over to the back to check that everything's nice and flat and the center edges aren't overlapped. Next, we'll stitch on the 3 lines to hold everything in place. For each line, back tack at the start and finish, and go slowly over the fold so that everything stays nice and straight. Also try not to stretch the fabric when you're sewing across. For the trim, use 1/2 inch wide double fold bias tape. You can find my tutorial on how to make your own bias tape here. Try to use a length that doesn't have any joins in it. Start by cutting one end straight across and place that end on that center line. Match the edge of the tape with the side of the towel and clip in place. Just past the next line, fold the bias tape back onto itself. Hold down the corner of that fold, flip the tape over on a 45-degree angle, creating a mitered corner, and clip in place. To hide the stitch line, it should be just underneath the center of the tape. Pin that in place, then fold and clip the next corner. Clip the bias tape to the side, then cut the end right at that center line. Double check that the inner edges of the bias tape match right at the corners. Next, we'll be edge stitching the outer edge and the inner edge of the binding. Starting with a back tack, stitch 1/16 of an inch from the edge, making sure you're stitching through all the layers. Use a tool such as this awl or a point turner to help you hold everything in place. At the corners, stop just before the edge of the tape, have your needle down, lift your presser foot, and pivot. Continue all around and then turn and sew the inside edge. If you're finding this video helpful, make sure to like, share, subscribe, turn on all notifications, and leave a comment below. As always, I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Mark the center of the top of the towel. Cut the end straight on another length of binding. Place that end 1/2 inch past the side and then mark the center. From that mark, measure across 4 3/4 inches and put a pin there. Fold right at the pin and then cut so that it's equal with the end. From the fold, measure 2 inches and mark. Then turn over to the other side and mirror those 2 marks. It should measure 4 inches between the center marks and then 2.5 inches on each side. Next, we need to join the folded edges just between the outer marks. Edge stitch together and back tack at each mark. With the unstitched edge on the bottom, match the first mark with the center of the towel and center the tape on top of that stitch line. We want to cover the stitch line and the top edges of the tape. Fold the end over and clip in place. Pin the center and then repeat on the other side. Check that both sides of the trim measure the same and then pin across the top. Edge stitch both sides of the binding, starting from the side and stopping just before that center mark. There should be a little gap in the center where the binding isn't sewn. Place the second mark onto the center of the towel, stitch across the binding, and then repeat on the other side. If you're just hanging your tea towel on a hook, you're pretty much done. But if you're hanging it over a bar, you'll also need to add a little cam snap just above the binding to keep it from falling off. I also have another tutorial if you want to learn how I cover my cam snaps with fabric. Mark the placement on the front and back. When you're installing the snaps, make sure the back edges are open. You can get a bit more creative and use narrow lace instead of the binding, and you could also embroider something onto the front. Make sure to have a look at some of my other hanging tea towel designs. Thanks again for watching, take care, and happy sewing!